We're going to jump into this. The first thing, I didn't intend to do this initially, but a client sent me a file and I realized there was a problem with it. And this is a good example of why I use plugins. Technically, you could use Illustrator and do everything I do and not use any plugins. So why do I use plugins? Well, it makes the process easier. And this just turned out to be a good example of that. Now, when I originally developed the graphic for a client, it had a sword in this shield design. I've changed the letters and the coloring so it doesn't kind of give away since it's not public yet. Uh, but when I gave him the artwork, he had made changes to it, the person I gave it to that I was doing this work for. And I noticed when I was looking at this, when he sent me back the vector art, that the top of this arch is kind of wonky. It's not a nice, perfect curve. And I wanted to fix this since we're doing a secondary graphic now. And I want to improve that curve because I wouldn't have created it this way. And you might not even understand what I'm talking about. So I'm going to demonstrate how I'm going to fix this so the curve on the top part of the shield is elegant, precise, and it's going to work better than what you see here. Now, normally, if you go to create a circular shape or a curve, let's say you're doing a circle, you're going to have a central anchor point here to kind of help that Bezier curve appear nicely. If I select the shield, you notice we don't have one here. So one way that I do that in Illustrator, you can do it by selecting this and go to Object, go to Path, go to Add Anchor Point, but it's going to put an anchor point on each of the path in the shape. So you're going to get a central anchor point on all three sides of the shape. We don't want that. So if I do that, you can see it adds an anchor point on all three sides. I'm going to undo that, Command Z. All I want is one on this side. So what I can do with the direct selection tool, just select that path, and then using Path Scribe, which is part of the Vector Scribe plugin, I can go to the option menu here, and I can go add anchor point to selected segment, and it's going to put how many ever I want. In this case, I just want one, so I'll click OK, and it adds one to that side. So that's one nice thing that I use. I don't use it every day, that specific feature, but when I need it, it really does help. Now, the reason why I did this is because it's going to help me to create a more precise curve. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to kind of mute this back a bit. And this is just so you can see what I'm going to do next. So I'm going to zoom in on this. And the first plugin I want to show you is one called Scribe. As I use this more and more, I find more usages for it. So I'm going to select one of the tools. First, I'm going to color the stroke, this magenta color. But here you have these four tools, and we're going to specifically use Circle by Points tool. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to select this anchor point. I have Smart Guides turned on, Command U. So I'm going to hover over, define that one, pull it out, define this side edge, and then we're going to snap it to that central anchor point like that. And you can see this is the way the curve should look, but somehow it got wonkified. I know how it happened because he went and edited my original design, and he created the top part, just didn't really do it super precise. So we're going to improve that. That's all we're going to do here is just improve that curve. Now, to get the inside part of the curve, this is where I'll create a throwaway shape. And here, I want to match this thickness. So I'll do that just to read up here in the control bar at the top of the screen. The width of this is 13,873. So I'm going to copy that. Oops. Copy that, select the shape we just made, and I'll go path, offset path. By the way, if you're using CC 2019 or above, it's kind of nice because they put, if you have, in this case, this shape selected, they have offset right here in the property. So I can click that and it saves a little time. And I want to do a negative, so we'll do negative 13.873. You can preview it. That's okay. We'll click OK. So now we have the improved curve going along the top for both the black and what's going to be the blue shape and the white shape. Now, on this shape, I'm going to go ahead and ungroup it. It's going to get rid of the tint. That's okay. And just for clarity's sake, let's go ahead and just select all of this, and we'll just turn it to paths for a second, but I'll change the color. We'll do, now let's do a lighter one. We'll do this color. So we can see the red on it. I'm going to go into this shape, isolation mode, double click into it. I'm just going to use the scissor tool. I'm going to cut here. I'm going to cut, oops, and up there. I'm going to select this segment and just delete it. We don't need it. And right here, there's a gap. And here's another tool, this part of Vector Scribe. It's called the Extend Path tool. I can grab any point and it'll follow along the mathematics for how that path is traveling. So I can just pull it past this point. And since this is a 90-degree angle, I can just slide it directly up. And all I'm doing is I'm creating and closing that shape. I can double click out of isolation mode. We'll go over to this one. This is more production oriented work. Oops, let's zoom in. So you can see how it comes just short here. And so we'll want to go over here and we could even cut it there if we want to. Get rid of that one, slide this one. Slide this up like this. And once again, go back to this Extend Path tool. And once again, this is another plugin I don't use every day, but when I need to use it, it saves me more time. Because if I didn't have the ability to just grab this and precisely move that curve past this, I'd have to eyeball it. There is no precise way of doing that in Illustrator without a plugin. So it's really nice when you do need it. It's not something you'll use every day, but when you do need to use it, it's going to save you a lot of time than trying to build this from scratch with the native tools and AI. So we'll go ahead and double click out of isolation mode. I'll take this inside shape and I'm just going to copy it, Command C, Command F. I have a keyboard shortcut set up. Select this shape, intersect it. So now we've improved the curve of that one. And we'll do the same thing over here. Make a, select this shape, select this one, and intersect it like that. Somehow we got this extra shape, oops, over here. We can ungroup that, get rid of that. And then over here, this one's just gonna be black like this. And then on the improved curve over here, this is where I just create a throwaway shape. So I just go like this, snap it to that corner, go like this. And close, oops, close this shape like that. Once I add that, I'd select that, let's go ahead and zoom out. This is a little hard to see what I'm doing, okay. So we have this shape, we have the original curve we made with the Scribe plugin. We'll intersect it, and then I'm just gonna fuse it, and I'm just gonna pull this one down since I don't want it to create a redundant point. Select these two shapes, fuse them together, you know, delete any artifacts. And this is gonna work good now. So I'm gonna send it to back. We'll color this, fill with black like that. Go ahead and select this and this. Just for right now, we'll fill these all white. Select this, send it back. This is gonna punch through this white shape. So we'll minus front using Pathfinder. Always make sure it remains a compound. This one over here, all we're going to do now is just color it what we intended it to be, which is this blue color, like that. And that's how I would fix that using using plugins. Also, the other thing I'll do at times is maybe I didn't want that curve so thick. That'd be another case where I could do the same type of thing. I'm not going to build through all this. I just want to show you that, you know, you do have choices. So I could go like this and like this, and maybe I decide the curves looks better like at that range. So you could use the same principle to make an improvement, not just fix a problem. So that's a tool I use all the time. The ability to create elliptical shapes like this is just so much faster, because natively in AI, you'd have to take the circle tool, and usually I'd find a central anchor point, and I'd kind of go like this, and you're kind of eyeballing it, and then you'd slide it down and figure out where it looks good. And it's just a little slower. And that's why I use tools, is to do something like that. Now, sorry, I'm trying to get to see where there's the participants. So do any of you have any questions? You guys are all pretty quiet. I want to make sure. Oh wait, do I have all of you on mute? Can you unmute yourself, or do I have to unmute you?
Oh, we're here. I think we're just all on mute. Listening.
Okay. Well, let me show you one thing, because that extend tool, by the way, I have my auto savior turned on, so I'm going to turn that off. If you don't have a question, just kind of mute your mic, because I get feedback when I hear that. Just to show you more of an example of how this plugin works. Let's say you had artwork like this, and for some reason you decided you wish this curve went further over this way. So the same thing, you could go in and just, you know, cut out what you don't need, kind of like that. So if you select this, you want this end to continue along that curve, and this is where you could grab it and just extend it. So it works really good. That's a pretty lame example, but you get the idea. It really is helpful when you need it. Once again, not something you're going to use every day. So let's go ahead and jump into what we started yesterday. And for those who weren't here, once again, I didn't realize you could record a screencast without an account. And so I wasn't logged in. That's why it ended. So it truncated everything. It started off with this sketch, and then this is the sketch we're going to build from. We got right around this point building this, and this we're just going to continue. So we're almost done with the owl here. So most of these shapes are just singular closed shapes like this, sitting on top of one another, and we're going to eventually color those. But when it comes to detail like this on his, I almost said chest hair. For an owl, I guess it's kind of chest hair. For his feathers on his chest, I'd handle it like this. And then once I had that path, I would go, in this case, again, I'm using a plugin. If you want to use Anchor Point Tool here, you could grab it and do the same thing. I just never really use that tool because of what I showed last time. And once again, for those of you who weren't here, if you double click the Anchor Point Tool, there's no way to customize it. And that's why I use Scribe tool, part of Subscribe or Vector Scribe, because it gives me all kinds of control to customize it. So it really is really nice. And so I'll go in and I'll just use the Bezier handles to adjust these like this. By the way, does anybody know where that name Bezier came from? This is like a quiz.
Yeah, the guy that invented the Bezier curve, I guess. It's
Very good.
it's in your book. That's how I learned about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Email me a mailing address. You get a sticker.
Okay, I will.
So these are just going to be paths, and what we're going to do is I'm just going to kind of give them a little more volume by selecting them. Going to, where did I put strokes? Once again, I don't have my palettes set up the normal way I do, so I'm hunting and pecking to find stuff. Do I not have strokes open? Maybe I don't. Oh, that's where it was hiding. Okay, so if we go in and add a thickness to the stroke, we can then go up here to profile and select this, it's width profile 1, which is kind of tapered. And you can use, well, it doesn't look that great. It looks, let me try something. It might look better if we actually break it. Yeah, that looks better. So we wouldn't want to connect it. I mean, you could initially build it that way, but you'd want to keep them independent because it just ends up looking better. And then I'll go in and finesse these a little bit. You can see how right here, it kind of comes to a weird kind of curve there. So I just pull this out just to make, just to improve that kind of, it's kind of pinching on the inside, I guess. So that's a lot easier to create something like that than trying to just create a shape. You just start with the stroke, use a width profile. Now, you don't even have to expand these if you don't want. In this case, I probably wouldn't. I would just group them like this, and we'll apply a color to that later on. Here's one thing I do want to do. I'm going to select the base of this owl. I'm going to clone it, Command C, Command F, and just so you can see it, we'll fill it with a blue. And all I'm going to do is, actually, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to select this, and we have an anchor point here because we made this with 2 shapes. I'm going to select this and smart remove it. Now, when I say smart remove, let me zoom out a little. It's a little hard to see what I'm doing. If I say smart remove, I mean, I want to move it, but retain the curve, because if I just use the anchor point, remove selected anchor point in the control panel up here, it's going to ruin the art. It's going to do that, which eventually I hope Illustrator gets around to making that kind of functionality smart. But I've been using this for years. It's the smart remove point on this Path Scribe panel, so I can select it, go smart remove, and you can see it doesn't mess up your art, which is what I want. And then I'm going to select the in here, drag this up, then drag it down until it snaps right on the path. This is where you'll want to have smart guides turned on, Command U. And then once I've done that, I'll select this handle here and, oops, I'll select this handle and I'll just adjust it with the bottom of the owl like that. I might go over here and, what am I doing? Oh, and move this one down like, kind of like that. Not a big deal, but we'll go on to the moon now. Moon's going to be pretty easy. This will all be shapes. We're going to use just simple shape tools, in this case, the elliptical tool, ellipse tool, to create circular shapes. I don't care about keeping it a perfect circle. I kind of want to retain that kind of awkwardness of not being perfect in the drawing, because it kind of looks nice that way. So here, I'm just creating the shape for the eye. Now, even though I initially drew these lines here at the top of the eyelid, I guess, The more I look at that, the more I don't like it. I'm probably just going to keep this a flat shape in here. But as I go along now, I'll just use one shape to edit another shape. So I made a clone of the eyelid. And where did I put my path scribe or my path? Oh, there it is. And I'll just trim off other shapes like that, make a copy of that, intersect this. So I tend to build as I go when I'm working on this. When I get to kind of what's going to end up being this big area here, I'll snap to the point of the eye I just made like this. I'll select the base shape, which is the moon shape itself, clone that, Command C, Command F, select this, and just intersect it. And that's how I'll create all the shapes. Eventually, this will be sitting under all the various shapes, and I usually don't delete it. I just move it to this X layer, which is like a junk drawer. So if I ever want to use it later for something, I haven't discarded it. So I'll do this, we'll create this shape. Once again, I'm snapping to points because I have smart guides turned on. Kind of creating all the elements that are going to make this up. Select the moon shape. I'm going to clone this a couple times. 1, 2, 3. I'm using keyboard shortcuts. So assigned to the F3 key, I have an action, and that action, it runs Command C, which is copy, Command F, which is, now I can't remember, paste in front, I think, and then the menu command to bring to front. And if I grab one and move it, you can see I've just made a bunch of copies of that shape. So when I shape build, I use that quite a bit. So I'll select one, select this shape, intersect it, select the next one, this shape, intersect it, this shape, intersect it. So you can see it goes pretty fast when you kind of think in shapes and just use simple shape building methods. Not a whole lot of pin work you have to do at this point, especially on these. These are just elliptical shapes. Since we have this shape ready, we can clone this, select this shape, intersect it, select this shape, and intersect it. The whole reason I don't color as I go along is I like just focusing on colors and doing exploration as I color. And I don't want to intermix that thinking with trying to just construct the base shapes. So I tend not to do this, not to do it at the same time. Here's another way I use Subscribe, this plugin. I showed you the circle one. They also have a line tool. So in Illustrator, you have this line tool, and you can do that. It's okay. I don't use it that much. But once I discovered Subscribe had this, I go, what's this? And I clicked on it and I started trying it, click. Oh, it's just a line tool. Well, yeah, but once you select it, you can do this, which is really cool. And then if you, with it still selected, if you click, well, look at that. You can keep building with it like that. It's really cool. I've been using this quite a bit now. So I'll select here. I'll go here on his nose. And it's that easy to create most of this shape. I'll go back to the pin tool. And I'll close this path out like that. I'll select the base shape that we're building from. I'll clone it. Let's go ahead and fill it so you can see what's going on. So it's above everything else. I'll select that nose shape we just created and trim that. So it makes building like that a lot faster. I mean, it'd be kind of a, you can do it just as, almost as easy. Like if I had the pen tool, well, let's just do this. This is why I have a temp layer in my layers, because at times I'll just move something to there so I don't lose it. But if you're going to build this from scratch, then you'd want to take the pen tool, make sure you're on the right layer, snap it here, like this. And then, you know, the anchor point tool, if you're sticking with native AI, And you could do that. It's not that that would be wrong. It's just that curve isn't going to be that nice, precise angle that you get when you use the tool I use, this one. So let's move that back down to our layer here and turn that off. We'll go ahead. Man, you guys are quiet. If you have a question as I'm going along, just go ahead and shout it out. Once again, I'm not doing an offset on these because I don't want these perfect. And my outline does get bigger as I'm scaling. You can actually turn that off in preferences if you don't want the stroke to scale, the weight of the stroke to scale as you're working. I kind of, most of the time I do, so I don't do that.
Vaughn, do you ever use the shape builder tool?
Yeah, I do. That's the kind of work that I like using that on is, let's see, if I'm doing kind of a design or illustration that's all stroke based, like trying to think of one. Oh, I can show you one really quick. So if I'm doing artwork that looks like this,
Oh yeah.
I use the shape building tool to easily kind of trim strokes, which is a lot easier than what it was in the past. In the past, if I had, for example, let me zoom in. For example, if I wanted to trim this in the past, and I wanted to, wherever I wanted to trim it, well, this is an easy one because it's 90 degrees, but pretend, well, let's go ahead and make it an arch. Let's do this. Okay. So let's say we had this, and in the past, I wanted to trim it like right here. Well, you would have to like zoom in and use the scissor tool, and it's just kind of laborious to do that. So it's a lot easier with the shape building tool, you know, just hold down Option and do that. So I use that all the time when I'm doing that type of building. Not so much on what I'm doing here. I just find the Pathfinder works a lot faster. But that's a good question. So I think the first thing I'm going to do, so I'm going to build the shape that goes behind the eyes. And intersect it. Make sure it's behind everything. And then I'll make a copy of this. And I'm also gonna go, oops. See, usually when I'm working like this, I'm not attempting to carry on a conversation or explain stuff. I'm usually listening to an audio book, so.
Which of the Astute tools that you use is most useful for the building that you're doing now?
Well, everything I'm doing here is just, right now specifically, is just native to AI. The ones I use, the tool I use the most is Vector Scribe, and that consists of these 4 tools here. Actually, these 4 tools that show up, but within these you have other tools like the Extend one, Smart Remove Brush, the Reposition Point tool. This one, this Reposition Point tool, here's a story behind that. I'm at a conference, I'm hanging out with Nick, who is the president of Astute Graphics. We're just talking, and I just, off the top of my head, go, you know, there's times where I'm working and I just wish I could grab an anchor point and slide it around a path to a new position without like without having to add an anchor point and then remove it or clean up the path. And then it was like, I forget how many months later, he goes, hey, I want to show you something. And that's what that tool does. It's just, it's pretty cool. So for example, you isolate an anchor point with direct selection, go to this tool, and then you can just slide it wherever you want.
Wow. Wow.
And so
I
now
can think of
that
times I could use that. Yeah.
yeah, and now that that's in there, I use that all the time now to finesse stuff when I'm building.
It's pretty cool. I use the Glyph app to develop like typefaces, and the
Oh,
best
it'd
thing
be
about
great for typefaces. Yeah.
the best thing about the Glyph app is just moving the anchor points like that, and then I found this here. It was pretty cool.
Oh, so the Glyph app, they have that feature then. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
they
cool.
have that feature to move it around a little bit, nicer than this tool, but this is really cool. This is a really cool addition that I found here to move anchor points around.
So here's a good example of using Scribe to create this shape. If I tried to align where the tandem between these two paths come here and then align to here, and I was doing it just visually with the ellipse tool, it'd take quite a bit longer. And here it only takes a matter of seconds, do some simple shape building, and you can get done pretty quick. There. I think we'll do a few of these. We can start coloring it. Okay, we're almost there to start coloring it. I'm not going to build these lines. Yes, there's a star tool. You can do that, but I don't want these to be perfect. The one thing that about digital illustration, specifically vector illustration, is, for example, let's say you were illustrating something and you wanted to show a forest. Last thing you want to do is build one tree and copy it like 20 times. It's going to look replicated. It's the better way to handle that, if you had to have like 50 trees, let's say, is to build, I would build like 10 trees that are different. And then I would populate those to create 50, but I'd be scaling, flipping, that type of thing. That way your eye isn't, or anybody's eye that is, isn't able to pick up kind of, or detect, what am I trying to say, a pattern to it.
Vaughn, I've seen you before use where, let's say you have something that comes to a point and you want to make it a little bit more curved. And then once you do that, I don't know which tool you were using, you just started to touch other points and it copied the curve.
Yeah, that's the, actually, we'll do this here on the tip of the owl's ears. and the tip of the moon. The other part of the Vector Scribe plugin is called Dynamic Corners. And the reason why I use this over the corner widget tool in Illustrator is just because I don't have to pre-select an anchor point, and then the little widget control will show up. You notice that those Illustrator corner controls don't show up on my machine because I actively disable it. So under View, I have Hide Corner Widgets turned on, and under my Preferences, under Anchor Display, I have it set to only show at 3%. So it, like 99% of the time, will never show up when I'm working, because I just use this tool so I can grab this and I can just round it. I want this to be a subtle round like this. And then it remembers the last application, so I can just go over here and click this corner to apply it
Yes.
there as well. You know, we could, it's dynamic, so you can always go back later if you don't like it and remove it. And let's say you're further along and you want to sample one corner, you can go over here and just click on it, and that copies it. And then you can go to another corner as you're progressing and apply it to that. So it works that way as well.
Yeah,
So
very
that's
nice.
I use that quite a bit. It's funny because rounding stuff is really common now in artwork, and it was an aesthetic that was actually created because of the lack of technology in the past. You'd shoot on a stat camera, and over the course of 10 generations of those copies, the sharp corners that were originally created that way would round off because of the optics of the camera and stuff. And now people do it on purpose because they've come to really like that aesthetic, which is, you can see that a lot. A friend of mine is Bill Gardner of Logo Lounge. And if you go to his site, gardnerdesign.com, you can see a lot of their brand work has that aesthetic to it, where it's usually flat base colors, but a lot of little subtle rounds on things, which look really nice. So when it comes to coloring this now, one thing that I did recently is I did this artwork for a DVG lab, but I really like the colors. So I didn't want the colors on this owl oversaturated, so I was going to try to play around with this same type of color palette. You can see I have a folder down here with those in it. And it's usually at this point that I'll select everything minus the feathers on his chest. And I've just found it easier to fill. You can see some of these are being covered because they're dropping behind other things. So we're going to move that to the back, move that to the back. This. Usually I cheat when I'm doing my DVG lab and I set stuff up because I don't want to waste time. I have a finite amount of time. So you're seeing all the pre-production stuff I usually do before I record a movie. Like that. I did that just because it's easier to select a shape that has a fill rather than something that's just a stroke only. That's why I did that. And it makes it easier to colorize. So in this respect, I don't want anything to be black. So I'm going to colorize this. This is like it might appear black, but it's actually a really kind of dark blue. And I don't want the moon to be yellow. I kind of want it to be a cool color, almost like, I don't know, night, I guess, or so. We're just going to experiment here. It's not going to be one singular color. It's going to be a combination. I really obsess over this stuff as I'm doing it. So many times I'll just sit and look at something until it hits me. I'm not going to stick with just that color palette, but I try to pick a limited amount of color. So This style works best in that. Otherwise, it can get like really busy. I use global colors, by the way. Let me show you what global color means. So on the eye, I colored it this color. I don't want it this dark blue, but because I have global checked, when you look in your color palette, it allows you to do tints. So you can do tints of a color. So instead of being a stark white, I'm making it a 10% of this dark blue. I do that quite a bit. I don't like this color. Let's figure out something else. Maybe, oh, I like that. And once I have colors set, I don't really need to go back to the palette here. If I know this is going to be the colors, I want this everything on, in this case, the moon to be. I just want to limit it. Then I'll just select this and I'll use, just hold down Command. I don't know what the equivalent on PC would be. I don't know, whatever the equivalent of the Command key on the PC is, that will give me back to selection. And then I have the Eyedropper tool. So I'll just experiment. Maybe this is blue. No, I don't want blue. Maybe that. Then we'll go back to blue. I don't know if I'm digging these colors. I'm gonna have to play with this more. I'm intimidated now because I don't like these colors.
It looks good.
Yeah, I was gonna say these look pretty good.
I mean, it's a moon unlike any I've seen before.
I think this is too muddy, this color. And, you know, I've always wanted to talk to somebody who's a specialist in color separation, because even Illustrator, if you look at the title, the Illustrator just defaults into there. Notice they have whole numbers. They don't use fractional numbers. And I've always wondered if that makes a difference. This is, you know, rounding off, this would probably be 85, rounding down, 44. Nobody's ever told me if it makes any kind of difference, but I like having whole numbers in there. It's, I don't know, it's almost like
Vaughn,
OCD.
I know you can change, you know, you select a shape and change the color. Can you select multiple shapes at the same time and change the tint or hue of a group of colors?
Yeah, if you're using global colors, you can see it changed all of the iterations of that color. You also have the capability of, let's say this green wasn't a global color. So even if I went in and changed it, if it wasn't a global color, it only changed that one shape I have selected. So if you go to select and you go same fill color, and I click this, it's going to select anything with that fill color. I have that set up as an F key, so I can select one. I go Option, F1, and it'll do the same. So I use that quite a bit, and I have that also set up for same, select same stroke color as well. So I think that color looks a little better.
I think what Professor Goldberg was more saying is, like, if you wanted to select, say, the 3 colors you're using and drop them all down into saturation at the same time, at the same level.
Yes, that's what I was asking. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
I don't know if I've ever done that. I think, I want to say you can, but I would have to check into it because I never, that's a good question. I'm sure
that
you
way
can.
you'd stay, like, still on the wheel, like in relationship. If you have like a color that, like, they all work well together, if you just drop them all together, they should still work well like that. And then you just change like desaturation or vibrance on them.
Yeah, let me see.
Yes,
something.
thank you. That's exactly what I was asking.
I know there's edit colors. There's saturate, so maybe this is it. Yeah, I think this is how you do it. So right now, intensity, let's see what this does. Yeah, there you go. So I guess that's how you do it if you're dealing with saturation.
Or maybe recolor artwork.
Say that again.
The recolor. Yeah.
Artwork.
Oh yeah. Well, this gets into like a NASA level interface. Yeah, I'm familiar with this. I never use it because it's like trying to learn Klingon to do simple color editing. Actually Morty Golding was part of like conceiving this, and we did a talk together where he showed how he used it, and it was pretty impressive what you could do, but it was like over my head. I'm like, yeah, that's too complex for my taste. I'll stick with a more simple method. Now, if Monica Guys, she was a technology editor of my book, if I ever have questions about stuff, I'm always asking her because she knows everything about Illustrator inside and out, every feature, you name it. Just give me an idea. It's Illustrator, if I'm correct, at last count, has 88 tools. In total, over the last 18 years, I've used maybe a total of 15 tools, multiple features, obviously, but primary tools, all I've needed is 18. So I just stick to what I know, and it makes things go a little faster. Just notice this guy didn't have his wing part there. So anyway, let's see if we can wrap this part up, and then maybe we can jump into some other things that you might have questions on. So I like the fact that owls tend to be pretty much monochromatic for the most part, at least in the Northwest. They don't get as crazy as some birds, tropical birds specifically. So we're going to try to make him, actually, I'm going to have to, I do want to have this color, a version of this color that's darker. So we'll do that. So that's how you change it into a global color. And I'm going to apply that here. Maybe that's even lighter. I like that.
Vaughn, in creating a character like this, would you ever want to maybe, let's say, create half the owl and then copy it and flip it?
Yeah, if I was doing it perfectly symmetric, I kind of purposely kept this a little off because I like the characteristic of that. But yeah, if it was symmetric, I would definitely do that. I mean, perfectly symmetric.
Doesn't Astute Graphics have a plugin that does symmetry in that super specific way?
Yeah, they have
I'm
a
not sure.
plugin called Mirror Me, and you're able to do all kinds of stuff with that. It's crazy what you can do. It's a fun one to play around with as well.
Do you use that pretty often, or it's just kind of like...
I don't use it often. I've used it in the past to create patterns, and I don't have it installed, or I'd show you. I try to keep my my tool palette as kind of pared down as I can.
Mhm.
Vaughn, what are the top Astute plugins that you use? What are what are your go-to plugins?
Vector Scribe I use every day. Subscribe I use every day. Let me finish coloring just his, I almost said chest hair again, his feathers on his chest, and then I'll show you another one that I use quite a bit. I use more and more. I used to not use it that much because I just frankly would forget about it. But it's called Collider Scribe. So let me create a few graphics just to kind of show you what it does. So let's do that, and we'll just grab this one and make a copy. So if I wanted this to kind of collide with this shape and then rotate it around the shape to a specific point but still have it touching, I could select this and select snap to collision and then grab it, and notice it's going to snap here, and then as I go around it's going to keep it snapped to it like that. Or you can do this, which is rotate at collision like that. And now this one I don't use quite a bit, so I might be, oh, there we go. So like this.
Oh, okay.
Once again, not something you're going to use every day, but when you
Right.
need to use it, man, it just, not having the ability to do that is like, you're kind of, it's like trying to figure out a math equation. Okay, if I have this here, how do I rotate it around here and figure out all the calculations? It does improve in that respect. The other part, the Subscribe, another reason why I love using that is at times, one specific project I was doing a while back was I was creating an engine graphic. By the way, I'll just say right up front, I know nothing about cars for the most part. So if I don't get the terminology right, you know why. But whatever the belt thing is on the front of an engine, you know, that drives stuff, it kind of has a small gear of sorts, a large gear. Well, trying to hit the tangents to create, you know, a line from this one to this one, you'd be eyeballing it. And with Subscribe, they have the tangent line tool, so I can just click anywhere and then it'll snap to that tangent here. Give it a stroke like that, or I'll go over here and it'll snap to that tangent. And then I can just switch to the pin tool. Let's say I wanted to close the shape like that. Select all of them and color them. So you can select, you can make a perfect shape like that, which takes seconds, where you'd be kind of eyeballing it if you're just working natively in Illustrator. So
I'm sorry, Vaughn, what application was that?
the plugin is Subscribe.
Oh, it is Subscribe. Okay.
Yeah, and Subscribe comes with these 4 tools. At times, have you ever created something? So you have this right here, but maybe over time you've decided it looks better like that, and then the bounding box is, it's no longer in the original orientation you had. That's not a very good example. Let's do something else. Let's go back to this guy. So let's say you had this design, and at some point it got rotated, and it's like you want it back in the original position, and it's not at like, let's say, a perfect 45. Well, you can go like this and try to figure out where it would go, but you're kind of eyeballing it to get it back to the right spot. Well, the Subscribe has this Orient tool where you can select any 90-degree line like this, and then it'll reorient it to a perfect, to the perfect orientation.
That's great.
Now, there's times when you create where the bounding box kind of looks like that. And so if I need to reorient it, I'll use this tool to do that. and it'll put it back in the right orientation. That comes, I use that quite a bit too at times, because if I'm building a larger design, there might be elements in it that would be a lot easier to build at a 90-degree angle. And if you try to rotate your, well, you can't rotate your artboard in Illustrator still. They've tried to implement that. I believe it's 4 times, and they haven't been able to. So that's why that's not in Illustrator. So if you're trying to rotate all your art and build something and rotate it back, it can kind of be a pain. So what I do is I usually will grab my original sketch, make a copy over to the side, and I'm trying to figure out how to best to demonstrate this. So let's pretend this is my sketch, and I'm building this sketch, this drawing from this drawing, and this is 90 degrees, but the element is actually angled, and it'd be easier to build at 90 degrees. So what I usually do is I'll create a box like this before I rotate it. Then I'll select both that and my sketch, and I'll rotate it to where my sketch is aligned to a 90-degree angle. You know, then I'll build out my design here, whatever it is. Let's say it's this fat little sword, whatever, like that. But now I want to put it back into its original orientation. Well, if I eyeballed it just by rotating, I'm not sure, but because I have that plugin, I can select both this and the original shape that is 90 degrees and select this, and then I could get it back to that exact 90 degrees, and then I just align that with my original design. So I do that quite a bit. It makes that kind of building easier. Once again, that's kind of a lousy example to show, but let's see, what time is it? Well, I've gone about a little over an hour, so I think I'm going to call it quits. So if you guys have like suggestions on what you'd like me to see cover on another one of these, just email me anytime. You can use the email that I sent the link to, or you can send it to question@dvglab.com and suggest a topic or what you'd like me to see demonstrate, and I can do that as well. I hope you got something from this.
Yeah,
I just
this was
realized I forgot to put the feet on the owl, so the owl doesn't have feet. Oh well.
Yeah, thanks, Vaughn.
This has helped me realize that there are so many things I do the hard way. So I really appreciate this, because now it's motivating me to go and figure out some more efficiencies.
Oh, no problem. I'm always, the best way I work is, or the best way I learn is, I've seen somebody else do something. I go, hold on, what'd you just do there? And they'll show me, and I'm like, I didn't know you could do that. And then from that point forward, I'm using that method. Like, I was at somebody's workstation the other day, not the other day, they had like 7 years ago. And I said, you ready to go? He said, sure. And he stands up and boop, it's like he closed his machine like a fraction of a second. I go, how'd you do that? And I didn't know that. You hold Option Command and you hit the eject key on your keyboard, and you can just, it just puts your machine to sleep. You don't have to go pull down a menu and do it. I've been using that ever since. So
That's great.
yeah. So
I could watch you do this, you know, whatever, anytime, anything that you're doing. I'd be thrilled to watch.
This is pretty simple. I mean, I go in, probably add shading and stuff to this, but actually I'll show you one thing I would do, if you don't mind a few more minutes.
No, I'm totally willing.
No, keep going.
I'll do that. I do have to go visit my daughter today and set up her machine in her bunker in her house. So I'd take the brow shape here, make a copy. I'm just going to create a kind of a shadow shape.
Vaughn, for another one of these, if you could explain how you did the coloring for Krabuki, that would be amazing.
Oh, I could, yeah, I could do that. So I'm going to create a sliver shape. In this case, probably keep it brown and then multiply. We'll try 40. Oh, maybe not that color. Let's try a different color. Multiply. Yeah, something like that would work. Just to give it a little depth.
That's great. Yeah.
A copy of the eye. So again, creating a little sliver shape. And then I'd probably use the same color down, maybe not, maybe. So this one where it could get darker. I like that. I wouldn't get too detailed with it, but I like adding little elements like that. But maybe that's what we'll go over next time, is I'll just show you some color and detail stuff that's pretty simple to do.
Yeah, that'd be great.
I did a course years ago for LinkedIn called Color and Detail, and a few things have changed since I did that. Later this year, I'm going to audit that course and kind of update it, because I have changed a few things that I do, because they've, like you said, I'm always trying to figure out better ways to do things, and I've discovered a few of those since I did that course that I think makes the process a lot easier. So anyway, thanks for stopping in, spending a few minutes on your Saturday. I hope you guys stay safe, and I'll let you know when the video is done, and if any of you have posted questions in the chat, I'll respond to those too and answer those as well. So have a great day, and thanks for visiting.
Thanks.
Thank you.
You too.
Thanks, Vaughn. Thank you.